Hey Bible lovers, I'm Tim Nichols and I'm here to bring you your Nichols Worth, and today from Zondervan we have the Amplified Study Bible. Now the Amplified Bible has a lot of advantages, but it also has some disadvantages as well, because the Amplified Bible, what it'll do is it'll supply certain definitions to certain words, because sometimes a Greek or a Hebrew word can mean more than one thing. The advantage is sometimes you can get a fuller meaning. The disadvantage is sometimes a reader can make up their own meaning based on the interpretation they prefer. But let's go ahead and take a look at this. It is a hardback. It does have a dust jacket. I am not a fan of dust jackets, so generally what I do is take them off. And when you look at this one, it's not particularly beautiful or ugly. It's just kind of plain, but for this one, I'd probably go ahead and leave the dust jacket on just because I think it's a little more attractive. It is a paper liner. It does seem to have some book reinforcement tape there. But as we dive into this thing, this one is pretty simple. It's cut and dry. First of all, you can see the layout. It is thin paper. It is a bit ghosty. We're probably not going to get anything premium in this, so this is probably the best you're going to get. But it is a 2-column layout. And this is a 10.5 point font. The commentary is a little bit smaller, and then you have your cross references on the bottom. There's 2 types of commentary. There are study notes and then there are theological notes. The study notes, you will notice, are italicized and they're generally kind of brief. But when you get into a theological note, for example like this, you're going to see that it's bold, it's not italicized, and it has a dash, and generally they're a little bit longer. So these are some sort of theological truth like God's providence, God's sovereignty, and things of that nature. There are absolutely no color accents here. This is just a plain Jane, but it does get the job done. Where this Bible really gets its reputation of being helpful is in its amplifications. And you will see the amplifications in parentheses here. And it shows you that this says sons, but more literally it means descendants. There are some instances where the amplifications will provide help. For example, here, failed, coming to nothing, Israel meaning Jacob, the person, and then the true Israel. And there are also instances where sometimes it'll make interpretations for you, and that can be right, but it can also be opinion. So overall, while this can be a great tool, I do caution you to make sure that you understand that the parts in the parentheses are not inspired. It's added by the translator to bring clarity, but it's also going to have their theological point of view. There are also a few occasions here and there where they'll give a few word options to let you know what they mean, but we need to make sure that we let the context decide that and not just pick the one that we like. They also have little brief book introductions. Like, let's go to 1 Kings and just look at the beginning, because they're very short. This paper feels really thin. I'm going to say 28 GSM. Doesn't appear to be coded. It does have a bit of ghosting, but when you get to the beginning of a book, it does have some charts and pictures, but not a whole lot. This isn't meant to be a real decorative or ornate Bible. It'll give you a brief thing about the author. It gives you the time that they believe it was written in, gives you some key verses and a quick theme, and that's it with your introductions. But let's go ahead and dive into the New Testament. There's a look at the poetic settings just so you can see how that ghosting works. But once you get to the New Testament, you will see this is a black letter text, and there's also cross-references in brackets down here, and that lets you know where this topic is dealt with other places in the scripture. So it's not necessarily a cross-referencing system, but just lets you know, like a chain, how this works. Also, when it's quoting the Old Testament, you will see that the text looks a little bit different. So now let's find a spot where we have one of the amplifications. For example, here where it says signs and wonders, it says attesting miracles. But there are several places where you will see several definition options. And the benefit to that, as I said in the beginning, is you can find that useful to help you get a fuller meaning. But the disadvantage is it can lead the reader to make their own conclusions and to make their own meanings outside of what the original author intended. Generally speaking, our translation committees do a wonderful job of capturing the author's intent and giving us the correct meaning. So I would go with that before I would go with my own, oh, I really like what this means if we say this, or implying that the word means all of them. Because sometimes there's several options a word can mean. Even in the English, there are several options a word can mean, but we have to also consider the context, the sentence structure, the intent of the author. So if this is something that you think you would enjoy, it is a nice resource. It is very inexpensive and something that you may find useful in your library. God bless you. Keep calm. Jesus on. This is your Nichols Worth.